How has an ogre squashing me into goo changed my life? How do you escape across a chasm guarded by goblins with nothing more than rope and a piece of paper? Today, we find out how role-playing games will change your life. Hello, welcome to Tales Under the Cat Tree. I'm your host, Dupes. Each week, I pair a compelling piece of fiction or autobiography with bigger topics. Stories provide a lens into capturing and understanding history, technology, or business by connecting personal narratives to the wider picture. Please do take the time to subscribe here or on my Substack at tales.dupes.ca for more original writing and engaging interviews. This is a two-part episode about role-playing games and Dungeons and Dragons. This episode is a background on role-playing games and how they could possibly change your life, and certainly how they have changed mine. The second part will take you into campaigns, worlds, characters, and sounds of my current role-playing group here in Helsinki, Finland. But first, let me give you a brief and personal history on tabletop role-playing games. If you are listening and have played Dungeons & Dragons for a while, I doubt my story is that unique. Sometime in 1987, my high school friends Neil Wally, Tusha Saluki, and specifically Nick DeGraff invited me to join them in a game called Dungeons & Dragons. I think one part of me only went because I wanted to be one of the gang. I did not know then how life-altering this introduction would become and how firmly this game would change the trajectory of my life. I have been known to say that role-playing games have taught me more than degrees and courses. And it is quite true. I find I dig into this well of gaming experience more often than not in everyday life. Dungeons & Dragons, or more commonly known as D&D, and other tabletop role-playing games are more popular than ever. There is Critical Role on YouTube, Stranger Things on Netflix, which is basically an homage to D&D, and there's even been a proper and pretty good Hollywood movie. These days, it's cool if your kids play D&D, and I know plenty of parents who go out of their way to make sure that happens. But back when I was growing up in 1987 in Hong Kong, D&D was not at all mainstream. I don't know how many people listening have ever actually played a full session of tabletop role-playing, so let me first give you a quick introduction. A single individual, called the Dungeon Master or Games Master, or DM for short, creates the story in which a group of people play characters. The group of about 6 or so generally sit together around a table with their rules, their character sheets, maps, and maybe miniatures. The DM usually has encounters and scenarios planned, but the players are usually free to figure out and roleplay their way through. Oftentimes, the DM may find that their story goes in completely unplanned directions. Unlike in real life, of course, to keep the story and the world together, the game is run through different game mechanics, like rolling a bunch of different-sided dice that control the outcomes. Sometimes things work out as you wish. Other times, an ogre squashes you into goo before your party members can save you. By the mid-1980s, Dungeons & Dragons was already a fairly big business. By this point, it had also become a little controversial, probably because the rulebooks often had artwork of archdemons and pentagrams. It blew up in the media that D&D was giving rise to satanic cults and kids were being brainwashed into murder and more. The reality, though, was that D&D was a game for the nerds in the 80s and 70s and even in the 90s. The game was built around math, and everything happened in the theater of the mind. If you really wanted to do well, you had to do a fair bit of reading. How many kids do you remember sitting down to learn exactly how wide castle walls could be built? And what was the best way to break out of a medieval dungeon? In Hong Kong, while my mother did ask me several times if D&D was bad for me and whether it was going to keep me from my studies, I don't remember her saying anything about me coming home to start sacrificing bunnies. By now, I believe I've been playing D&D or some form of role-playing game for almost 40 years. My D&D playing morphed into Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, Shadowrun, Pathfinder, and more recently, Daggerheart. These are just a few of the multitude of role-playing rules out there. There is literally something for everyone. When I could not roleplay as a teenager, I was reading. Fantasy and science fiction were my two favorite genres. But now I devoured books like Raymond E. Feist's Magician, Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, and David Eddings's The Belgariad. On top of these were the books that TSR Inc., the company behind D&D, was releasing throughout the 1980s. I remember dragging my mother to Toys R Us so I could buy a copy of R.A. Salvatore's The Crystal Shard. This book I would read over and over again, so much so that even today, all I need to do is close my eyes to bring back the smell of those pages. I longed to roleplay in campaigns that would result in characters such as Caramon and Raisin Majir from the original Dragonlance novels, which the authors Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman said came from a live role-playing session. To fulfill that dream of bringing such characters to life, I've been part of many role-playing groups over the years. These groups have told many stories together. However, I can truly say that my current role-playing group in Finland is perhaps the longest lasting, and dare I say, at the risk of a bunch of people yelling at me, the most amazing. For 6 years, and straight through the COVID pandemic, Andres, Olli, Nick, Niall, Liisa, and I have fought monsters, solved puzzles, saved centaurs, stolen silverware, switched bodies, laughed till we cried, and cried till we laughed. In a recent game session, I brought out my microphones and asked them to tell you why they considered role-playing fun and important. I did spring this on them without much warning, but it's fitting you listen to their comments about role-playing before you hear mine.
Okay, this is Niall, thinking about why I enjoy playing TTRPGs beyond the superficial level of like enjoying a fantasy adventure with different rules or like different kinds of settings. I think for me, I get a lot of satisfaction out of being presented with problems that have clear solutions, or pretty much any problem that's put in front of us as characters within whatever world and rule system we're using can be solved. We tend not to face like impossible issues or confusing existential questions. The worlds we play in tend to have much more clear-cut black and white rules where you know what's right and what's wrong, and you know what you can do and what you can't do. It's much easier to know your place and how the character you're playing relates to everyone else and to the world they inhabit. It's also a break from your own life. You get to be someone else who has different values or responds differently to situations than you do. You can like try out other types of personalities or other ways of responding to life. It's like a safe sandbox test environment where it doesn't have any consequences on your real life.
This is Andres. For me, TTRPGs are the perfect hobby that combines all the fun parts of a board game, of an improv class, while being really creative. So it scratches the itches of playing games with rules and combat and dice rolling, or it could be a card game or anything like that. Some kind of, as I said, that improvisation, like coming from theater with friends, and also being really creative as both as a player creating your character and making random decisions, or as a DM creating a world. It scratches 3 itches from me, and all in a perfect package that is doing it with friends. So it has everything that I would ask for a hobby. That's why it's my favorite hobby.
And Nick, I think a lot of good stuff has been said already. I've always preferred socializing when you have some type of activity along with it rather than just sitting and chatting. And I think the TTRPGs are pretty fantastic for that. And it's always a lot of fun, always laugh, always up to something. It's also a way of like inserting yourself into stories. Like I've always enjoyed fantasy and sci-fi, read or watched various stories, but you never really had the same type of chance of inserting yourself and like playing out your own version of those, just reading a book. it's just like different in that way. You get a chance to experience something like you wouldn't normally. I'm also not the type of person who typically likes getting on stage or be the focus of attention, but that's different with a like known group of good friends. It's a really good way of like exercising that type of creativity, those creative muscles.
This is Olli. In terms of why I like TTRPGs. Interestingly enough, I think for me, as someone that maybe used to be more of a gamer, I think these D&D sessions or Daggerheart or whatever we're playing now have pretty much become my only touch point with a lot of gaming. And this has been the one that sticks. A large part of it is getting to see my friends on a regular basis, and that's really important. But in terms of the game itself, I think definitely a part of it is that kind of escapism, for sure. You might consider yourself a moral and good person in real life, but these characters that you play through different campaigns and one-shots allow you to kind of maybe try out, what would it be like to play a bit of a dick or something like this, or to have someone with a bit more of an ego or something like this, even if you would never want to be that person in real life. I think I saw a great meme once, which was that these games are, it's that, man handshake meme where on the biceps was written, one is math nerds and the other is theater nerds. And I kind of think that TTRPGs are like a pretty good combo of kind of art and science, or art and math in that kind of sense. And you can kind of lean into one or the other a little bit more. So you can choose to be a bit more theatrical with it, but you can also choose to just play a completely min-maxed super character if you want to, and both are deemed acceptable.
I'm Lisa. For me, tabletop role-playing games at worst, like let's say I had a really busy week, I'm super tired, I don't want to go out of the house, but we have scheduled a session. There's still a hangout with my friends. Like even if I don't have the energy to engage with the content, we are still laughing, we're still making jokes, we're still hanging out, we're still catching up. And at best, I think role-playing games can be transformative and, dare I say, life-changing. I've met some of my closest friends that I have now through tabletop role-playing games. We engage in adventures and stories, and even though everything is fictional, everything is made up, at best, the emotions are real. There's a lot I think I've taken away from role-playing games. Maybe one example, one of the tips you get as a role player is to be a fan of your party members, because that way you engage more with your party members. And I think that's something I've tried to, as an introvert, also try to take into life, to be a fan of the people around me, to be a fan of my colleagues. I think that makes it easier for me to engage with people and to pay attention to what's going on around me.
Well, I guess yes. Now I do need to sound intelligent after all that. So let's give it a shot. In truth, it has taken me almost a half-century to realize the many skills that Dungeons & Dragons and role-playing have given me. Let's start with research and history. A successful role-playing session requires preparation. Even though you are playing a fantastical character in a fantastical universe, there is still some semblance of physics in that universe. In the old D&D, myth and history played a large part of the worlds that you played in. You needed to understand why your characters might be motivated to move around in the world. Often, the best stories are not about you going into a dungeon, killing a bunch of monsters and saving someone. After all, maybe the person didn't want to be saved in the first place. Maybe the economics of the world changed the meaning of your quest. From D&D, I learned how to research, understand history, and often the motivations and reactions to those with power, because in these worlds, you are someone with power. Second would be all about writing and telling stories. The core of D&D and role-playing is the story. As the DM, or even as the player, you are telling a story and reacting to how others tell a story. Most of our lives are about stories that we tell, and much of what we do in our work life is creating stories and explanations that move something forward. If I am to convince my boss of some better way to do something, it is how I explain and guide someone's imagination that ultimately results in our success or failure. tabletop role-playing is one of the easiest and most fun ways in which you learn how to spin a tale and convince others. Third, the world is full of game systems and mechanics. Role-playing systems try to codify life, physics, and a universe into game mechanics. Real life, on the other hand, is messy. However, as you boil things down into systems, you do realize that humans and our weird brains just absolutely love these systems. You start to realize how often we try to change the messy to something much neater. It is amazing how quickly your mind adapts to such systems both in game and in real life. For example, one of the simple mechanics of role-playing games is that your character levels up, meaning your experiences make you more powerful. This search for more experience is modeled and simplified from real life. However, as with real life, it is a real dopamine hit when you finally get that spell you've been wanting. It is not unlike a salary increase. If you spend enough time in role-playing games, you start seeing many of the other systems we wander through as nothing more than mechanics to drive you forward. This may sound obvious, but playing with these systems in a simulation like role-playing games can teach you how you might react in different circumstances in real life. The emotional and dopamine hits do actually carry over. The fourth way is lateral thinking and the art of asking questions. One of the most underappreciated talents in life is the art of lateral thinking. Picture this. You have a large chasm before you. A horde of goblins has stolen all your gear and stands between you and freedom. You are left with a small length of rope and a magic ball that can bounce perpetually. What do you do? Well, I guarantee you that there are a sizable number of ways to escape the situation, and they are probably not the most obvious. However, the most important thing to do is not to try and solve the problem, but instead to ask the questions. Start with the most obvious one first. What's behind you? Most scenarios in tabletop role-playing are about asking questions and rarely coming up with solutions. And when you do, it is rarely the most obvious answer. Remember that the best stories have multidimensional characters. Even the villain might have a good reason for what they're doing, and running in to save the day without questioning could result in death for all. Funnily enough, this is true in real life. Finally, I learned how to lead and be led. I was the kid with the stutter. In Hong Kong, if you wanted to stop the bus for your stop in the 1980s, you would have to yell, "Gao Lokum Goy," or in other words, "Stop please." I sometimes missed the stop because I couldn't get the words out of my mouth. As I delved into D&D and practiced playing roles and spent more time with friends such as Nick, Touche, and Neil, I stopped being so shy. I think they probably regretted it because once I got out of my introverted, shy, stuttering bubble, I don't think I ever shut up. My extroversion, my love of acting, my being unafraid to stand up and take charge when needed, much of that came from D&D and the time I cultivated with those friends. When we lead something, we are all playing a role. It's pretty much the same as acting as a rousing knight errant, ensuring your party does not get crushed by the dragon flying overhead. But even more important was the lesson of when not to lead. Sometimes you need to support. You need to take a back seat and be the cleric that heals so your party can survive the big fight. In role-playing games, you play a hero amongst heroes, just as in the real world. I can think of many other things I've learned, and I'd love to hear other people's experiences from role-playing. I have not even stepped into the wondrous world of being the DM. Maybe that's for a future episode. I have often said that words create the worlds that we experience. Tabletop role-playing is the truest form of that expression. If you have never tried a session, there is no age limit, there is no age barrier. You do not need to be shy, you do not need to be the class clown. In its truest form, you connect with people and with yourself. You see the world around you in many more colors and nuances, and you will most likely have a ton of fun. I had no idea how much my life would change in 1987. To this day, I doubt Nick, wherever he is, has any clue how much he changed my life. But I am so very glad that Nick asked me to play that day. In a future episode, I'm going to take you deep into our role-playing group as we play through a campaign in a new role-playing system called Daggerheart. You've met the protagonists on this episode, so I hope you come through the proverbial portal into the magical worlds my friends and I have created and listen to the stories we tell. As Gandalf says to Bilbo in The Hobbit, "It's a dangerous business, Bilbo, walking out one's front door." Thank you for listening to another episode of Tales Under the Cat Tree. If you want more original stories and interviews, check out the archives wherever you listen to this podcast. We've covered topics and stories about immigration, artificial intelligence, Stalinist Russia, and otherization, to name but a few. If you have fiction writing you want to feature, or have an interesting story to tell, or know someone who does, please do get in touch with me. This podcast will always be free. Support our work by subscribing and sharing with those who might care. You can reach me through email, contact@dups.ca, bluesky@dups.ca, or on my Substack at tales.dupes.ca. The intro music is composed by me. Give your pet a cuddle and your loved ones a hug till we meet again for some Tales Under the Cat Tree.
Well, Dupes, you didn't give out your version. Lame, yeah.
He's going to just take all the best shit from everybody and be like, I thought of it first. Here's me being very intelligent on my podcast.
And now you hear how they copied me.
You don't know how I'm going to. Here's my bullshit imposter friends. Regurgitating my thoughts.
But in reality, he's just casting fireball from every character.
Oh no, do we have to be nice to you now because you're recording your spray of podcast?
No.
No, he's going
When have you ever been nice to me?
Exactly.